All right. Well, good morning. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, staff, and good morning, guests. Good to see you, and I think we will call this meeting to order. So I just want to start with the land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaty signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. And Mr. Clerk, do we have quorum?
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that we do have quorum today.
That's fantastic. And I see some guests joining us this morning. So I'd just like to welcome Councillor Daigle-Gammon and Councillor Morris to our meeting today. And welcome to our CPED committee. So we are going to start with the approval of the minutes from April 21st, 2022. Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Yes, thank you. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye, awesome. Moving on to the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Mr. Clerk, do we have any additions or deletions?
Thank you, Chair. There have been no requests for additions or deletions received through the clerk's office as of this time. All
right. Do we need to vote on that?
Yes, we would need just a brief amendment just to approve, or sorry, a brief motion to approve the order of business today.
All right. I'll call for a motion to approve the order of business today. Thank you. Thank you. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, moving on to business arising out of the minutes. I don't think we have any. Call for a declaration of conflict of interest. None. Motions of reconsideration, we have none. Motions of rescission, we have none. Consideration of deferred business, none. Notices of tabled matters, none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Clerk, do we have any correspondence?
Thank you, Chair. We have received correspondence for two items today, item 10.3.1 as well as item 12.1.1. All correspondence has been circulated to members of the Standing Committee.
Excellent, thank you. Petitions, do we have petitions from the clerk office or any of the members of CPED?
Thank you, Chair. No petitions received from the clerk's office.
All right. So we are moving on to our presentations, and our first presentation, item 10.3.1, Northern Suburban Area Outdoor Community Recreational and Teaching Facility. We have Rita Ningham from HRM Northern Suburban Area Community Turf Committee. Welcome. So we have 10 minutes, I believe, for this presentation. And Simon, are you going to be the timer for this?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will be the timer, and I'll give a 1 minute notice.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome to CPED. No. Don't worry. Don't worry. You're not on the clock. Not yet.
Really appreciate this opportunity that we have to speak today on this project. And I want to start out by saying I'm a sports mom. Like many of you and your families in your communities, I have 3 kids and I wanted to keep them active. I have driven a minivan across HRM and beyond for soccer, baseball, football, many other sports too. So why am I here today? Because I am passionate about making a local community sports venue available for this generation and the next. If we took a map of HRM and said, where should we put a new facility and turf to keep kids and seniors active, we would pick a spot that as many families could reach as possible. That's easy to drive, where it's easy to park and accessible for many of the HRM residents as possible. Today we want to tell you about an ideal spot and a ready-made project that could be something you as councillors and your residents in your district to get excited about. So I am Rita Ningham, and I have been the chair for the committee for the last few years, and I want to tell you how this can happen. And beside me is a person who needs no introduction, Corey Bell, and he is an advisor to our committee. And also present is Troy Deviney, and he is our Vice President Treasurer of the committee, and he is also a part of the community fundraising efforts. So before we begin, our committee acknowledges and celebrates the history of the traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people, and we promote Indigenous recreation, and that will be discussed later in the presentation. So our primary goal is to promote healthy living for all members of the community. The project plan is an artificial turf field with lighting, a training track, and Indigenous space. So we are asking you to support this project at Regional Council for HRM to take the lead and financially support 20%. And Corey will later talk about the financials in the presentation. So like I said at the beginning, this is your HRM district map, and if you kind of close your eyes and point, you would end up at this location. It's kind of central to both rural and urban areas, and there's easy access to this area by the two major highways, the 102 and the 118. But also of significance is the actual growth in this zone. So this is a map of the Waverly, Fall River, Beaverbank, and several connected communities. And as you can see, there's going to be a lot of infrastructure growth in this area, and therefore we need venues to be able to support that growth and to be able to reduce commute times for families to support environment and climate change, and also the rising cost of gas. So the 5-year growth rate of 20. Okay. The 5-year growth rate of 23% translates to a population of about 25,000 people in this area. There's also no public transit in this zone, so it's challenging for local residents to access other fields. So as I mentioned in the beginning, since this area is home to a substantial off-reserve Indigenous population on lands culturally significant to the early Mi'kmaq, this project will promote Indigenous recreation and include a teaching space. So Shelley Martin is one of our committee members, and she works very closely with Chief Bob Glode at Millbrook. She has discussed this project with him. He is definitely on board and is providing us a support letter. She'll also be discussing this project with Pam Lode at the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center. So basically, the idea with this space is to have benches to be able to hold about 20 people and surrounded by ceremonial bushes and interpretive boards to teach the history of the area, which is kind of tied into the lock system. So this is the teaching component of the project, and it could be used by the community for ceremonies and teachings, and also by the Lockview High School Mi'kmaq class. Well, in this picture, like they say, picture says 1,000 words. And as you can see, this is the current status of the field at the Lockview High School site. And this was taken last summer. And you can see pretty much this is underwater. And believe it or not, there is a gravel track that surrounds this, but you can't even see the track. And you can see the status of those player benches. So therefore, the current field and track is very unsafe, unfit, and not usable for most of the year. And what we would like to do, and we propose, is to upgrade that current field and track to a multi-sport artificial turf with a 6-lane training track for running and walking groups, in particular to support active senior living inclusion, since there is limited sidewalks in our community. There is also a plan for a senior complex to be built close to the site. So the facility will include lighting, perimeter fencing, a field house for sports equipment storage, washrooms, player benches, spectator bleachers, and a scoreboard. There is also plenty of parking available. So HRC owns the land and supports the build as indicated in your letter in your package. So the project received many support letters from various sport associations shown on this slide, with a combined sport membership of over 25,000 members. The executive directors from these sport teams have stated that there is a lack of fields in HRM. In fact, Peter Crow, who is one of our members on our committee and is a president of Suburban FC, which is the largest soccer club in Nova Scotia, stated that he could book every field time as of today, and he is actually turning away membership. So all three levels of government also support this project. Our local councillors, Kathy and Lisa, who are here today, and MLA Brian Wong and MP Daryl Sampson, who have provided us a signed commitment letter that's also in your package. Dr. Strang, who lives in the neighborhood and who often I walk with around our crescent, wanted to let you know that he would welcome a safe place for our community to walk, in particular his son who has CP. He has also provided a letter of support and agrees that more outdoor facilities are required in HRM for physical and mental health, especially during a pandemic. So a recent survey results from 675 residents indicated that 84% feel the current field is unsafe and 90% support a new field, track, lighting, and Indigenous component. So now I'll take a break and pass it on to Corey, and he'll talk about the financials.
And I'll be pretty brief. So we did go out to a local construction company to get a Class B estimate on this. We came back with an estimate of $4.26 million for an overall budget. This would include the design and does include a contingency. As noted that this was done in 2021. There has been price escalations, as everyone is aware. However, we feel fairly good that our contingency would allow for those escalations as we see it today. The majority of the cost would be in the running lanes and the turf. It makes up for about 50% of the project or more. But these are essential, obviously, for the project. I did have our senior estimator to touch in on the pricing just last week to ensure that we felt that it was still within the range, because scope creep is always, scope creep and cost escalation is always a concern when you're supporting a project. So we're confident in the number that we have out there. As you see, the breakdown is in the package of what that would look like. We're looking for community and corporate funding support. We definitely have corporate support in the neighborhood that is willing to get behind this project. So the 200,000+ will be raised within our community. Then the number that matters the most, I guess, for this group would be the 20% that we'd be asking for the municipality, which feels like a very fair number when you look at the cost of these things that fall in when you have full responsibility and the benefit.
1 minute remaining?
Pardon me?
1 minute remaining?
Okay, that's it. You see the rest in the package. We'll send it to Rita.
Okay. So thank you, Corey. So to briefly summarize, the project is inclusive to all and promotes physical activity, which is important in a pandemic. The community and sports teams have shown an overwhelming support through a petition of 1,700 signatures, the survey, and numerous support letters. So in conclusion, we are asking you to support the project at Regional Council, and the project aligns with the key government priorities such as environment and climate change action, Indigenous learning and recreation promotion, seniors active living, and HRM residential densification. I'd like to finally thank and acknowledge the following long list of dedicated volunteers for their time and efforts on this project over the past few years. And thank you. And we welcome any questions at this time.
Well, thank you very much. That's awesome. I'm going to open the floor for questions of clarification. And go ahead, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Ms. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. You said in your presentation, a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's a pretty effective picture you've chosen. I didn't think there was a field out there that would make the Dartmouth High field look good, but apparently there is. So well done on that. I have 3 questions. Are you folks the same group that came, what was it, 2 years ago? Yeah, so this is continuation of the same, okay. The field strategy piece, I mean, that's what we've all been waiting for on this side of things. Have you guys been engaged with our staff at all on that strategy and the ambition here?
Yes, so we were involved with disseminating the survey for the field strategy and also part of the stakeholders focus meeting. So we've been very involved with them, but we've been waiting patiently for that document to come out, but it hasn't come out yet. So therefore, we decided that, if anything, this project would be the opportunity to show what the field strategy can do and be a good example of good representation of what it could stand for. Because basically in that field strategy, it was whether or not people want tournament-style kind of venues versus local venues. And I think Fredericton, I want to use Fredericton as a good example. That city has both, and I grew up in Fredericton, and I feel like there's something to be said about me to be able to walk down to my local community and there's a beautiful park, that I can play soccer, tennis, baseball, and there's something to be said about that. And I think Fredericton has done it right. And because they offer both, and I think that's hopefully that's what will come out of the playing field strategy, and hopefully our project, will be a part of that. And yes, and Park is also aware of the. I guess Kathy is telling me of the motion that's coming up. I don't know, Kathy and Lisa, if you want to speak to anything else, because I know you discussed things with Parks and Rec too. We've been very involved with them with this project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last question. I might try and sneak another one in here.
I totally forgot to start the timer, so go
Oh,
ahead.
unlimited time. Awesome.
You just reminded me, and my timer's coming out. So go ahead. You've got one more.
The support piece, not to pick on federal, provincial colleagues, it's easy to fire off a letter. Is there anything concrete from them in terms of an actual commitment for funding? It looks like Kathy's going to buzz in and speak to that, so I'll let her answer that one. And this might be out of order, Ms. Chair. I mean, I know we don't have anyone from Parks and Rec here. Does Ms. Denty know perhaps what's the timeline of the field strategy at this point? What's the latest?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the councillor. I was actually just trying to find out that the answer to that question. So it's a work in progress. I understand it was actually intended to be delivered last year. So I would say we've never been closer, but I don't have a date for you. So
okay.
we'll work on getting that to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Smith, and warning timer starts now.
Okay, thanks. Again, thank you for coming and sharing the information. Just for clarity for me, is this the Lockview High field?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
It's the current grass field that exists at Lockview High.
Got you, all right.
That's the location.
Thank you. So if you could just provide some more clarity related to and I lost it here. Here we go. Related to the environment and climate change action, how this fits within that priority, because it also mentions within the priorities recreational facilities within an easy driving distance, and using both. We're understanding that it's accessible for driving, not as much as walking, but that's because there's no sidewalks, et cetera, et cetera. But also recognizing that driving is not the best for environment. So just helping me better understand how it fits within those two categories.
Well, I mean, the thing is right now, people in that area, that Beaverbrook, that whole kind of zone, are actually driving a lot of distance out and to play sports. So that would limit that traffic going out to play sports and keep that traffic locally. And people able to actually bike and walk to that area, because if I think of, I can use the high school as an example, the football team could never train or practice or hold even a tournament there. They had to always go, so everyone had to transport out of Fall River to go to either Dartmouth or Cole Harbour to play football. That's just one example. And even with Suburban FC, with the soccer, all the folks in Fall River are traveling even all the way down to St. Mary's. The AAA teams and the competitive teams are all driving all the way across the bridge at 5 o'clock. You know, we try to carpool, but everyone is, lined up in the, you can see everybody in their cars lined up on that bridge trying to get to St. Mary's or Dow. So that's how I see effective change to climate change.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Councillor Smith. And we'll go to Councillor Outfit.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I thought Corey was here because he was going to announce he was writing a check, but all right. So obviously this has come forward before, and I've often said to Councillor Daigle-Gammon, and I will continue to say that, we have to, I certainly support the spirit of this, and that our growing areas. I represent an area that's had incredible growth as well, and the amenities have not kept up. So I'm very sympathetic to that. I will caution you, and I have cautioned the councillor before about this, is that it hasn't necessarily been a pleasant experience, the one in Bedford, because it's not open to the general public because of the expense and the risk of vandalism and whatnot. So the community gets upset when they can't go in and use the artificial turf at night because it's gated off and locked. We have football games, kids set off a flare or a firework, whatever burns it, and suddenly you've got hundreds of, tens of thousands of dollars actually to do repairs. And then of course there's always this conflict between the school, the teams, HRM Rec, over who schedules it, who puts the guards on it, who has the monitors, who has the keys. So it's a wonderful thing in the sense that an artificial turf could be used so much more, obviously, than a regular turf, and you're looking at adding more things to it. I think the one in Bedford was about 1.9, but it didn't include, and it was maybe 8-9 years ago now. Things go so quickly. But so I mean the price is almost double, but it sounds like you have added more into it, and I commend you for that. But I would just want to, and while I'll support the capital spirit of this, I have really some significant concerns about HRM sharing resources with schools, just based on my experience be it with the community center, be it with the artificial turf in Bedford, and the expectations of the public that they'll just be able to go down there at night, open the gate, and play on a $3-4 million turf. And they don't drive ATVs on it or campfires on it or anything else. So it has to be locked, it has to be monitored, and that comes. So I guess what I'm saying is look into the operating of this very thoroughly, look into the joint use agreements on this very thoroughly, and realize that there are some significant operating costs around security, et cetera, because this is not just a neighborhood field where you walk in and use it how you want, when you want. That's been my experience in West Bedford. And of course, it'll have to be outlined very quickly. Well, of course, the HRCE is supportive of it. Who wouldn't want this on their property? But what are they going to do to support it when it comes to operating it and maintaining it and scheduling it and policing it, this sort of thing? So yeah.
The CPA field, from an outsider, I guess, as a sports mom,
Yeah.
my daughter's played suburban soccer there every
Yep.
evening, so I mean, it's always been open to the public. Usually the service exchange agreement between HRC and HRM states that during school hours, The property can be used by the school,
Right.
and then after hours, it's opened up to the community. And HRM does all the scheduling and the maintenance, and that's what's in the service exchange agreement.
Right.
And as far as maintenance costs, it's usually offset by the revenue, and that was one in HRM's document. So because you can utilize turf fields for longer hours and there's less grass cutting and so forth, that those maintenance costs don't get out of control because it's offset by the revenue. So
It's open to teams as well as the school. It's not necessarily open to the public. And I regularly hear from the public that the kids can't go down and kick a ball there with dad at night because it's locked up, or mom. So just be careful how you interpret open to the public. Maybe things have gotten better, but initially, we had the vandalism issues, we had the access issues. But it sounds like, just learn from what we did right and wrong in West Bedford, and Kathy and I have had this discussion. But certainly I will support the spirit of this and hope that this will come to fruition for you, because it certainly makes a big difference when it comes to the teams and the school being able to use things at a much more frequently. Yeah.
And just to comfort you too, there is video cameras there right now.
Yeah.
Because of the parking lot, we've had to put video cameras up, and those will probably stay and obviously, be monitoring that turf field. And then usually HRM comes at night, just like at Weirfield and CPA, and locks the gates around 11 o'clock. I mean, no one should be on there after those hours anyways. Right. So, but the walking track, a lot like Beasley Field, I often see, or even at St. Mary's,
Yes.
I mean, there's a soccer team, like when my daughter is playing soccer down at St. Mary's, they're training and I'm walking around the track. So it is open to the public, the track.
Not so worried about the track, just wanting to set
Yeah.
expectations and little hints there about the actual field, because it's very expensive to build and to maintain and to repair. So, but thank you. Certainly happy to continue to support this through Kathy.
Thank you very much. And that was the bell. The bell went off. Perfect timing. Councillor Cuttle, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that presentation. It's obviously a very well-thought-out plan that you have, well-considered, really looking into the financing of it. I'm also sympathetic. I live and represent an area where there's a tremendous amount of growth in Spryfield, and we too were hoping for an upgrade in our new school to a football field. We were considering grass just because of the cost of the turf. So, when you do come forward, even though, I do see that you have other levels of funding in here and community contributions, the ask for, 850, 900,000 from the municipality, it is a big ask and it is a big consideration for us. So I'm just wondering, have you costed it out as a traditional grass field, or is that a possible viable option for this site? And if so, just thinking about the costing of it.
I mean, maybe Corey can speak to that, and I'll add in if I need to.
Excuse me. We have looked at all options on the budgeting, and which includes the track, how many lanes are in the track. We have looked at the cost, the long-term cost on a traditional grass field when you get into like the maintenance and the requirement to ensure that it is kept at an acceptable level. We don't have the experience on that, but we threw in money for that, what we thought it would cost, and over time the cost of an artificial turf for the payback and the benefits suited the needs of this particular proposal. And around the community, it is difficult to go from what we were told is a Class A grass field is what our current situation is actually classified as. So community support really would want to see an upgrade to that versus what we have right now. So that's a quick answer on the financial side of things, and we understand that there might be some financial constraints, and if you come back and say this is where we're comfortable, then we will reverse engineer this back to get the best value based on whatever the dollar value that is acceptable to council. So.
Yeah, because speaking to what Corey said, I mean, I'm sure we can fundraise a little bit more on that side if need be, if we can't you know, regional council can't put that on the budget. If it's too much, we can probably fundraise more locally. And I just wanted to answer another question too. I did present this to Minister Dunn, and he's definitely all for this and very excited about this project too. So he's very committed to that 35%. And as far as the grass field goes, I mean, with inclement weather in Nova Scotia, I mean, so many games are canceled. And then therefore you lose your revenue that way. And so it's just easier with a turf field. I find you get more utilization with a turf field than you would with the grass.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And we have Councillor Daigle-Gammon next.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Excuse me, to answer some of the questions that Councillor Austin put forward. The history behind this is that, yes, the first petition was the 1,700 signatures. And then this was my first motion, I think, at council coming in. And based on the staff report that came back from Parks and Rec, there was a lot of information there. So this fabulous committee took all of that stuff and came back now with a much more robust, well-planned out, well-researched project with more significant and validated funding sources, to the point that even last night I had a conversation with our MP, excuse me, got a frog in my throat, had a conversation last night with our MP, Daryl Sampson. I don't know if Daryl had a chance to call you last night, Rita, or not, but, and then he was going to be talking to our MLA, Brian Wong, because the federal government, there's a little bit of leniency in a project that's coming up. And so although they're committed at 40%, it looks like there might be some room to go beyond 40%, which is pretty exciting to see happen. So we're happy about that. The Parks and Rec staff have been extremely involved with this project over the last year and a half, to the point that they're even aware of this motion that is going to be coming forward. And they do see that the playing strategy has been delayed. It is almost finished. The person that was writing it last year, Philip Hammond, retired, and so there was a little dip, and now it's going to be coming back, but it might be the end of summer into the fall. And this is really important that we get this into the budget cycle, which is why we're not really waiting for the playing field strategy. We don't want to wait another year, and especially with federal funding. Brian Wong, our MLA, will be making sure that the province put it into their infrastructure acts to the feds, which means that that funding domino can fall as quickly as possible, which make it great for us. And in terms of the environmental thing, I think Rita answered that so well. We don't have transit. It stops at the airport or at the highway on the airport bus, but as soon as that transit boundary opens up, hopefully that will make things a little bit better, Councillor Smith, but until that happens, we're pretty much a desert out there. And if you look at, and one of the things that's really worrying me about our community is that there is a huge mental health youth issue happening in our community, and the lack of services and supports and sports activities for our youth. This will make a big difference in terms of people need, and our youth need things to do. They need that, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're doing great here, guys. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I don't think I can add much more than what Councillor Daigle-Gammon did. Although it's not in my district per se, the kids from the Beaverbank area attend Lockview schools, so Lockview is sort of the top of the food chain as far as the family of schools is concerned, and so it's my community that goes out to Fall River to get some of this recreation, because again we don't have these types of facilities in Beaverbank or Middle Sackville. Thank you so much to staff for their guidance on this one. They have been just extremely helpful and just so kind in their guidance of this. And certainly I echo what Councillor Daigle-Gammon said about time is really of the essence on this one. the money is on the table at various orders of government, and with new grants being introduced practically every day, it's really quite imperative that we get a move on this, and and I say time is of the essence, but really, I mean, as Councillor Austin pointed out, this really crossed our desk first a couple of years ago. And since then, this group has, as I've told them several times, you guys are doing everything right. You're aligning yourself with all the right people, you're getting the right information, and you're asking the right questions. So, I do see this as being an extremely successful project. Further to Councillor Oathit and his concerns on the day-to-day, I guess, of it. Yeah, absolutely, and this is a chance to basically build on the lessons that we learned through the West Bedford experience. So I do appreciate him bringing those forward, because it will be an issue moving forward. But like I said, I think this group is. They have a sense of maturity compared to other groups that have similar asks who have appeared before us. And like I said, they're no, I don't mean, that's not code. That's not code for anything. I'm not saying you're old or anything, but I'm just saying there's a sense of maturity with the ask and the pitch that, exactly. So anyway, just a procedural issue, Madam Chair. I do have a motion that I want to move. Don't know if this is the correct time to do it, or whether I'll just back off and wait until everyone has had their say. And
all right. Well, we have 2 more speakers on the list. So if you want to come back maybe and do the motion after the 2
absolutely
have had their.
I will stand by. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. That's great. All right, Councillor Austin, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask again about the money piece for the Feds provincial. So there's nothing committed yet, but there's positive vibes, and would that be fair?
It is committed. They're just waiting for the first level of government, HRM, to approve, and then everything can roll forward.
So the province, the Feds have actually said they will spend this money on this. Is it out of the joint infrastructure? Okay. I'll have to think on that one myself, just because, I mean, the joint infrastructure, I mean, we have a bad history in the municipality at times of chasing things that aren't necessarily our priorities because money is being offered. And so, I would feel, I'll consider, like, I mean, certainly what you guys have presented, I agree with everything that's been said about it being much more robust than when this first came forward. But I mean, without that field strategy, I find it somewhat difficult to say, like, well, yes, this is the place where HRM should be putting our money versus, just trying to take free money that actually is available in a pot that could be used, in any number of locations. Because it's not like a dedicated thing. This is part of that infrastructure program, right?
No, this is its own project.
This is its own project and not part of that bilateral, federal, provincial, where we all the municipalities apply for funding through?
It would be the same pool. Yeah, we just happen to have commitment from the province to move it forward, and we have commitment from the Feds to ensure that it gets through the process. So you're correct, it is the same pool, and what we're showing here outside of the strategy is it's really the commitment around the environment and working with Indigenous and First Nations group and other underrepresented groups that will allow us to ensure that it gets through the process. Because I understand your cynicism of money going through that, and fully appreciate it. I would say that we went a lot further than normal when dealing with our provincial and federal counterparts.
Yeah, geez, I don't mean to project cynicism. I guess that's what happens after 6 years of dealing with provincial federal counterparts. Yeah. No, certainly looking at the pictures, I mean, there's something needs to be done here. Just on my own feeling, I'd feel a lot more confident if I saw that playing field strategy come back, because then I could very confidently say, yes, this sort of scale facility, this location makes sense, and that's my timer, so I'll be quiet. Thank you.
I'm liking the timer. Go ahead. Ms. Denty, did you want to say something to that? No, you were okay. You were good. Okay, Councillor Cuddle, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I too think that the playing field strategy is a very important component, right? Particularly when looking at the financial request here from the city. I think it is wonderful what you have been able to do. And to Councillor Blackburn's point, you're making the right connections, talking to the right people. In that, I also see a bit of an equity issue throughout our municipality. In the communities that do have the connections, can make the cases, can pull the resources together, versus those communities that perhaps aren't as well organized but no less deserving of having investment in their communities around sports fields, access for youth to activities and programming, and all the things that Councillor Daigle-Gammon said around, the needs of the youth in Fall River and Waverley are the same needs of youth across our municipality. So how do we, as a city, choose where we place our investment to have the greatest impact? Transit is one of those big considerations. At the same time, I see a field very much in need of some upgrading and some work. And I also see a group of community members, putting in the work to make that happen. But I just think, as for myself, along with Councillor Austin's comments there, I would feel very much more comfortable if we could get that playing strategy put on the table, so we could see how, as a municipality, we're investing our resources. Though I do hate to leave money on the table, when it's there for upgrading facilities in the city. So I am a little bit torn, but I think it was actually Councillor Daigle-Gammon who said, when I brought forward my request, that not until we have the playing field strategy. And that we need to have that. We need to have that piece. It's critically important. So I'm gonna think about this as well at this moment in time.
To move forward on this project, because there's been money on the table now twice. We had it when Kathy came along with the COVID resilience funds with Daryl Sampson, and now again with Minister Dunn and Daryl, we're ready to move again with CCH. So we felt that we can't keep waiting for this playing field strategy. We tried our best to work with Philip Hammond and try to get things done, but we still have not seen that report. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background information on that.
I'm wondering if we can get an update on that. Like, I know I think we're closer than we've ever been before. What exactly does that mean? I don't know if there's some way to get an update, but it would be good.
Madam Chair, to answer your question, I think the councillor has probably more up-to-date information than I do, so I just don't want to speak on behalf of Parks and Rec, because I don't have a direct answer from them, but I would suggest that these two pieces are probably lining up well, right? So it's important that, council and the committee receive this information, so it's top of mind, but I think the strategy is imminent, is my understanding as well. So I think you're well placed to kind of move forward and have these conversations that you're having.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. And Councillor Blackburn, go ahead. Oh, sorry. Okay, you're at the end. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I guess this would be the portion of the program where I would move the motion asking for a staff report. And certainly, of course, understanding that everything starts with a staff report. I move that the Economic Planning, the Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee recommend that Regional Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer to request a staff report to advance the development of an all-weather field and running track located in the area of Lockview High School by the municipality, as outlined in the proposal from the HRM Northern Suburban Area Community Turf Committee, and including reviews and investigations of A, the suitability of the site, B, the funding as outlined in the proposal, including that 80% of the proposed funds be directly from the HRM Northern Suburban Area Community Turf Committee and the provincial and federal governments. C, the ability to enter into suitable arrangements with HRCE Province of Nova Scotia. And D, opportunities to partner with Indigenous community leadership. And 2, pending the outcomes of the reviews and investigations of the suitability of developing the proposed all-weather field and running track at Lockview High School, identify the project within future capital, operational budgets, and business plans, and include it in the provincial and federal funding applications. I so move.
Happy to second that. You wrote that very quickly.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, yeah, and certainly understand the reluctance with the turf strategy, the playing field strategy still in flight, but I think, where this is a staff report, this will give us the information we need on where we are with that report. And also just how this project could fit in. I certainly don't see this as jumping the queue, but I think it's an opportunity to work in tandem with the staff that are doing the playing field strategy and just just get more information through this staff report so that we can move forward with the project and at least give these folks some some indication as to how much money they need to raise, what other pots of money may be available. So I think, like I said, it all starts with a staff report. Let's get some more information on this and have a more robust discussion on it at a later date. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we have Councillor Austin on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quickly, I'll happily support staff report request. This is more for staff. My hope, just having been the staff report route many a time, is that the response to this, that our playing strategy is imminent and that the response to this can come back with the playing strategy, because I think that would be most helpful for council. In terms of the funding, I don't want to lose funding either, and particularly to me, it's not so much the provincial, federal, because, that pot of money, if it is that infrastructure pot, it's there. It's been there. Goodness knows we've been harping on them, especially on the transit side, to can you please issue some calls for it already? So it hasn't been going anywhere. So I don't think a few months would hurt anything in that sense. But having that playing field strategy back would be helpful. And of course, the piece on the financial side that's most compelling, more so the provincial, federal, is the community commitment and corporate commitment, because that truly is new money that would not be available for some other projects. So I will support the report, but I hope it can come back with a very much finished playing strategy for us to look at the entire picture of things. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to cut you off earlier, but yeah, that would be my hope as well. We try to combine staff reports or as much as possible, so I was thinking the exact same thing. So for economies, yeah, just respond to both motions with the same report. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Moore. She was on the list, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. I don't know why she evaporated, but there you go. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I'm not a regular member of the committee, so I'm just leaving my comments to the end. But I just wondered, when you were looking at your estimate, if you considered addressing the drainage issues as part of that estimate. I think it's an amazing project, and I'd hate to see it derailed by drainage, which can add to the expense of a project.
answer is yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have.
That's great. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't need a separate look in the staff report then, or do you think that should be part of the?
I don't think it would need a separate look into that. We had Stantec look at it with us, and we ourselves, Lindsay's, Dexter's, and Stantec, and between the three of us have come up, and we came up with the budget to include the drainage without putting any due stress on existing drainage structure.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Madam Chair, so I'm just a wee bit worried that we're going to lose 80 cents on the dollar in terms of timing. So this motion where it says a staff report, does the staff report come back to CPED and then from CPED have to go to regional council? Are we going to miss a budget cycle? So that's my biggest fear, is we don't want to lose the budget cycle. I can call Daryl this afternoon and find out if it's part of that or if it's a special funding, a different pot of money that I think he might have been looking at, that he just needed the province to put it on the list. But yeah, so from a process point of view, staff reports, everybody's inundated with staff reports. Look how long it's taking us to get a playing field strategy in front of council. So yeah, how do we expedite this request for the staff report so that we don't miss a budget cycle?
So obviously, thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, I'll need to go back and consult with staff as to timing, but I mean, there are also, I was mentioning in terms of if there's a will, you can even, skip CPED and go directly to regional council if that is the will, right, to kind of meet timeframes and agendas and whatnot. So we'll go back and look at that, understanding the critical timing of the other funding sources.
Great, so this motion then doesn't have to say go back to regional council?
You need to make a reference to regional council as a committee because I don't believe the
Great.
committee, right? So that's,
Right.
but in terms of our response, we can route it appropriately.
Thank you. So I think Councillor Blackburn, is back to you because I'm not allowed to make a motion as a guest.
I'll just let our solicitors speak on this first.
Madam Chair, if I may jump in here, it's actually not appropriate for a committee to make a recommendation for a staff report to go directly to council. It has to come back to the committee first before going to council.
We've seen it happen before. I thought we've seen it happen before, so I apologize if, I got that wrong.
Question the opposite. I think city hall could say, or city council could say, bring it to us without going to committee. I don't think we can do the opposite this year.
Okay.
We'll figure out the routing.
Okay. Okay. Staff are going to figure this out. They're on it. Okay. So I think we have one more. Councillor Outhet, take it away.
And it's
Yeah.
it's a very nice motion. But I'm just worried that it sounds like the overall strategy, Kelly, is coming late summer, early fall. I don't know that they have the time. I'm worried that this motion actually could slow things down. If you investigate the suitability, developing and all on this strike, I'm just wondering, did you run this by staff? Do they have time? Staff wrote it, okay. So they have time to do this work and bring it forward at the same time as we're asking them to start something new when they're just about finishing the existing report. I'm just worried that we're going to delay the existing report, or will they have time to do this? Maybe I'm overthinking this, but I think that we would want to have this site evaluated, and I support that. But we don't, so staff wrote this, they must be expecting it, and they must know that we want it back at the same time as the overall study. So we're not seeing any red flags as delaying this? Again. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
Because I'm happy to support it, I just don't know if we're helping or hurting.
Just for clarity, the Parks and Rec staff were a bit, Thank you. So for clarity, Parks and Rec staff were aware of the motion. The piece that is new is to ask for a staff report. The staff report wasn't part of the motion that they were aware of, because Parks and Rec already did a report on this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
in some ways, they might not be starting from scratch again. But I agree, Councillor Outhit, that, a staff report, as we said, our concern is only that it would delay it into the budget cycle. So that is the big concern about having staff report in the motion.
Yeah, I would have.
But I believe maybe, Mr. Clerk, you might have thought.
I would have thought that we moved this to regional council with our support, that we have this discussion as part of when the plan comes forward, rather than another staff report on this. But I don't know if that would expedite things or not. But Kelly, what are you thinking?
Sorry, I don't know if the clerk is going to speak, but what I was-
Sometimes we create too much swirl and then we die by swirl. So,
no fear of that. In these types of requests, they do need to be responded to via a staff report. That's a known, right? So it's really about a matter of the routing of the staff report coming back. So it's appropriate to ask for the staff report to get an appropriate response to the request. That's
okay,
the bottom
yeah,
line.
well, I'm just a little worried.
And I'm
with
glad
timing,
that
but
the clerk
okay.
agrees.
And if staff's expecting it, that's good news. So, all right, thank you. I will support.
All right, colleagues, are we ready for the question? All in favor, say, are we voting electronically or no? We're saying, okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. All right, motion passed. Congratulations. Thank you so much for your presentation. That was a very fulsome discussion. Very appreciative. Thank you so much. And we are moving on to our second presentation of the morning. Item 10.3.2, Policy Barriers to Environmental Protection. And we have Courtney Dunsby, Sustainable Cities Coordinator for the Ecology Action Center and Coordinator of Our HRM Alliance. Welcome. Oh, we also have Mary Ellen Donovan, also a representative of Our HRM Alliance, to give us this presentation. So welcome. Thank you for coming to CPED. So just a reminder before you start, you have 10 minutes, and our clerk will remind you at the 1 minute remaining mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello, good morning. Thanks for allowing us to present today. I would hope that I'm a familiar face at this point, but in case I'm not, my name is Courtney Dunsby, and I'm the Sustainable Cities Coordinator at the Ecology Action Center, and I will be presenting today with Mary Ellen Donovan. And we are presenting on behalf of Our HRM Alliance, which is a coalition of over 60 groups in HRM advocating for complete communities and a protected green network. And so why are we here today? Why now? Well, this is really a pivotal moment in time. As was mentioned by many councillors in this room regarding our last presentation, Halifax is growing at a rapid rate. Population and economic forecasts show this. As far as I understand it, HRM is actually the second fastest growing municipality in Canada. This requires us, and respectfully you, to think about how we want to be growing. And so far we've seen sort of a single-minded focus around development at all costs coming from the city, and announcements recently made by the Joint Housing Task Force and such. The Alliance's role in this is really to advocate for growth in the right way, sensible, strategic, sustainable, for advocating for complete communities. Now, green spaces can help with this. They're part of that. They can help the city to achieve its goals, such as Council's vision for a sustainable environment, as articulated in your strategic priorities plan. And lastly, why we're here today is because there's really a legitimate opportunity, policy opportunity on the table with respect to the regional plan review and ongoing bylaw simplification program. Now, because I'm at Community Planning and Economic Development, I would like to just take a moment to talk about how green spaces drive added economic value. For example, they increase land values. In Central Park, New York City, The land surrounding the park actually, within the first year of the park's operation, increased in value by tenfold. Another reason is because green spaces provide free recreation. Thank you, Councillor. Just to sort of make reference to our most recent presentation with respect to spending quite significant costs on capital recreation, green spaces do provide free access and public access to all. So this could be for swimming, skating, hiking, canoeing, even dog walking, right? The list goes on. And the last reason as well would be avoiding municipal costs. So if we properly integrate our natural assets into planning our communities, we'll save money in the long term. And so this could be with respect to cleanup, flooding, water pollution, climate impacts. A perfect example, ongoing example of this would be the blue-green algae issue. Now, HRM does recognize its natural assets. This can be seen in the 2006 regional plan, echoed again in the 2014 regional plan. In 2018, this council adopted the Green Network Plan, which, if you recall, has 79 actions on how to embed this natural asset valuation and protection into policy. And so the question is, if we have this great plan, why does some of these questions remain around? Why are there little to no on the ground visible impacts related to our natural asset policies, at least from the community perspective? Why are environmental or natural asset policies taking a back seat to development policies? How come some planning staff aren't aware of the Halifax Green Network Plan? Most relevantly, recently, why is the Utility and Review Board concluding that it has no choice but to favor development policies over natural asset policies? So this brings us to our problem statement that we're here to talk about today, and that is that there is no legal framework for protecting natural assets in HRM. And we've done a little bit of work to identify what the barriers to this might be, which is why I'm going to turn it over to Mary Ellen Donovan and her legal expertise to walk us through some of those barriers. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Wonderful to be here, and just lucked into the previous presentation, which I found as a member of the community absolutely fantastic. Wonderful to see the community doing this sort of thing, just fantastic. But from working on the natural asset issues that facing the community, the frustration at the community level is palpable. And the frustration is at a very high level as to why there's so little progress on that front, in spite of council's very strong support for these kinds of policies. And in talking to individual members of council, you see their frustration as to, okay, why can we not get anywhere on these things? And so, the thing to do is, well, try and find out why. Let's peel back the onion. So we came back and we found a number of things that we thought we'd bring to your attention. This is by no means the whole of the list. This is part of the 10 minutes. We're here with only this limited list because we only have 10 minutes. So here we are, and we've got answer number 1 that we're putting in front of you. And one of them is that because we're doing a regional plan right now, we want to be sure that there are bylaws provisions that implement what you do in the regional plan. It's required by the charter. So the city, you are required to do this, but in many instances, it doesn't happen. So we're just hoping you will be on the alert for that kind of issue coming up in the regional plan, to make sure that if you think you're getting a policy, that you double check over on the bylaw side, on the land use bylaw side, and make sure you're actually getting it. Because without that, you haven't got it. Next one that we've come up with to try and have you give some thought to is the fact that when you're putting in a policy, many policies just suggest that this be considered and considered and considered and considered. You find that word everywhere. Well, then what happens with the consideration? And for example, when you read the updates, the 2 updates that have happened to date on the Halifax Green Network Plan, the table cites, okay, it was considered, but how? And then you're left with not understanding, okay, well, if the consideration is not resulting in any positive natural asset decision results, well, why not? Because maybe you could fix it. But if you don't know what the underlying problem is, you don't know how it's considered, then you haven't really got anywhere with all the fabulous policies that you've adopted. And so what we're hoping in the update plan that we know is, or the update report that's coming imminently, we're hoping that instead of just saying X was considered, how it was considered and why it didn't happen. Then, if you'll note in bullet number, in answer number 2 on the fourth bullet, another issue is sometimes is the staff reports. So for example, what we're seeing in the style of the staff reports is that an application comes in advocating a certain position, and the staff report identifies all the policies that support that. Then in the alternative section of the report, it says, well, council can turn it down if it so chooses, but doesn't say why. And it doesn't say what the policy basis is for turning it down. And that leaves council at sea trying to understand, okay, on what basis would it be reasonable to turn this down, or maybe not? But you don't have the whole package of policies upon which to make the decision, and then that causes problems when you land in front of the UARB. So this is a common problem we've seen, and we're hoping that there be a better balance in the upcoming staff reports that have the whole suite of policies that apply to the project at hand embedded in the staff report. So there's an explanation given as to why you actually have the option, according to staff, to maybe turn it down or support it, whatever the case may be. But we're just looking for the whole suite of policies to be in front of you for your consideration.
1 minute remaining.
So one of the issues, and we'll leave it with this next example, and we won't even get to number 6, is, for example, in the Mainland South Secondary Plan, it expressly says that all other objectives and policies shall apply as appropriate, but shall be subordinate to the primary objectives and policies. That means that, and what the UARB has translated that into, is that the environmental policies are subordinate to the development policies. So you might as well not write them. What's the point? What's the point in having them there? Because you think you've got something, and you think you've moved forward with your natural asset and environmental policies, but you haven't.
10 minutes is concluded.
So we just leave these kinds of ideas, we're just placing these ideas as to try and help all of us understand why so little progress is being made when it comes to these projects in the proper integration of our natural assets, at a great cost. You know, there's a huge cost to, as it was stated before, this is the Economic Development Committee. There's a huge cost to blue algae, for example. That's a huge, huge cost. And as Councillor Austin knows, the issues that happen with the Dartmouth Lakes, big, big issue. So that's what's down the road when you don't follow your own policies with respect to environmental policies. So anyway, that's just for you to consider going forward.
Thank you very much for that presentation. We have a couple speakers on the list for questions of clarification. Go ahead, Councillor Austin.
Not sure if it's quite a question. Just as a comment on the one piece about having the full policy suite like alternatives, because you're right, you are kind of at sea if council is saying no to something. And the one piece is a recommendation, like if you're going against the staff report, right, in terms of justifying it. I don't know that we'll, I think there'd be problems with spelling out like the alternative argument, because the flip side would also apply, right? Like if staff were providing no, don't do X development because of environmental reasons, if you're setting out the alternative would also point to all the policies about why you should do this development, that then literally the people who might appeal at the UARB can just go to that alternative section and you furnish them with your argument. So I'm not sure that we'll ever be at a place where we're going to lay out both sides to a case in a staff report, but, and this is more of for my colleagues, because I know I've done this at a couple of times with different developments. I mean, I think it largely comes down to us doing our homework properly before the meeting to go have that conversation with staff and say, look, I'm not entirely comfortable with this recommendation. I'm interested in the alternative, and have the policy discussion with them, offline in advance, so that if you think you might be heading in a different direction, you're actually furnished with the argument there, rather than just voting no on something and then staff presenting nothing at the UARB when it comes time to defend it. So that's my own just thoughts on that one, as a way to try and. It's not quite the solution that you're suggesting, but I think it might actually be a little bit better and a little more doable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Austin. Go ahead, Councillor Cuttle.
I just want to thank you for coming and making this presentation today. I think when we do policies and we look at how we operate as a council and how we can best represent constituents and our communities, thinking about the tools and thinking about ways of making the process better is super, super important. So I always appreciate the thoughtfulness and the time that HRM Alliance puts into looking at these issues, particularly from the environmental perspective, because I do agree. I think too often development overrides our environmental policies, and in some cases it's that our environmental policies don't even have the jurisdictional teeth that we need to be able to apply them in their fullness. And so I look forward to future conversations with you about these issues.
Thank you very much. And that is all from our speakers list. So thank you again for your presentation. Thanks for coming into CPED to give us that. And colleagues, we are moving on to item number 11 on the agenda, information items brought forward. We have none. And this brings us to the reports part of our agenda, 12.1.1. We have potential changes to bylaw N200 respecting construction-related noise. Is there a presentation on this, or?
Thank you, Chair. There is a presentation available at the request of Standing Committee if so desired.
Yes, please. We will take that presentation. Welcome.
It's been a while. Okay, it's on. Okay. Through the chair to the committee, my name is Kasia Tota, principal planner with the community policy team in regional planning, and pleased to be here with a supplementary report on potential changes to the noise bylaw as it pertains to construction. Can everyone see it?
I think we need to put that in.
Yeah. Simon, can you help? Do I just do it here? Oh, okay. Sorry.
So
see?
you just go, you can control L, that'll do it too. Yep, there you
Okay.
go. And you can advance or use the...
Very rusty about being here. As CPED may recall, the original report was presented to this committee in last September, and it tried to respond to several motions. So the first one was made by CPED about requesting changes to a noise bylaw to better align prohibited times for construction-related noise with reasonable standards when adjacent to residential areas. So this is really about adjacency to residential areas. There was another motion made by Regional Council in January of 2021, asking for a potential permit process for temporary rock breaking, crushing, and other environmental and noise-related issues, trying to address those. So we returned to this committee in September, but there was a follow-up request to consider additional issues. So just as a reminder, and I'll get into the motions that we are trying to address in this report, but just as a quick reminder, the current hours for construction, a construction is defined in noise bylaw, very generally, are 7 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Sundays and statutory holidays. And there are some exemptions the council can grant, but they're typically related to festivals, events, so on and so forth, not for construction. But there is a process for construction as well that's the council can approve. So the July 16th CPET report proposed some changes. So it was based on community engagement, analysis of complaints, jurisdictional scan of other municipalities. And based on that, we proposed some changes to the permitted hours. And so the change was 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Friday, so as opposed to 9:30 p.m., finishing that a little bit earlier, and no change on weekends and statutory holidays. However, we also proposed to introduce a new definition for rock breaking, and proposed that as opposed to general construction hours, that the permitted hours will be 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday to Friday only, and not on weekends or statutory holidays. We also, based on a consultation with stakeholder groups, proposed a new staff exemption process for construction-related noise to extend. So while we were reducing the hours, there would also be an opportunity to extend the hours for some specific activities. And this included if there was a need to complete concrete finishing or concrete pouring, and need to temporarily reduce noise impacts during the day, as also identified under the project's approved construction mitigation plan. For example, if you're on a Spring Garden Road or you're impacting businesses, it may be better to do some of the work later in the evening. So this will be one potential reason to provide for the exemption process. Or there is a limited access to specialized trades and equipment, and this will be limited to 7 days or less. So just a bit of a reminder for what was proposed in the initial report. So CPET asks us to delve a little bit deeper into the following 4 issues. Explore options to expand notification area and communication for those new approved exemptions, proposed exemptions, sorry. To explore expanding or improving notification for blasting and construction-related noise that includes further communication to affected properties. Also explore changes to weekday end time hours, Monday to Friday to 9 p.m. for non-explosive rock breaking, and also options for time reduction for auto time reduction for non-explosive rock breaking. So I think there was a sense that maybe some of the reductions were perhaps going a little bit too far. So again, looking at each one of those, so the proposed notification for the exemptions include hand delivery of written notice to a minimum of 48 hours prior to commencing the work. So if you're asking for exemptions, so two days before, to all the property owners and businesses located within 30 meters of the work site. There's also a requirement for sign on site and a website with email contact or social media link. And the notice would include the reason for the exemption, the duration, and contact information. In addition, this will be more on the municipal side. We'll be proposing, an overall website where anyone could find quickly what the current exemptions are and where they are located. So that will be something on the municipal side, but it's not required in the bylaw. So we looked at various, again, this quick jurisdictional scan, and looked at various other notification requirements. And in the end, we concluded that just increasing notification area arbitrarily may not do the trick, because there is a wide context depending on the type of construction. It may be hard just to come up, is 50 meters enough, or 100 meters, is that enough? And also looking at the purpose for the exemption process to be fairly straightforward. So we opted to recommend using some of the language that we have in the blasting bylaw or construction mitigation where there's a minimum distance, so 30 meters we propose it remains. But there is a language that staff could require additional notifications, so could expand the area based on the project or environment or setting. So depending on where you're located and what you're doing, we could require to expand it. So it gives us more flexibility and more discretion versus having just one number. So notification for blasting. So the current notification is 300 meters from the blasting area, and also it can also be again expanded by the inspector or the engineer. It has similar notification requirements, contact information, the start of the blasting, duration, location. There's quite a bit of detail provided under the blasting bylaw. And a public information meeting may also be required by the inspector. So again, this is where staff have some discretion. There's also provisions that a detailed notice be sent to any schools, hospitals, or healthcare facilities within the 300-meter area or broader if required. And there also has to be notification at least 2 hours prior to each blast. So it's fairly stringent requirements are in the blasting bylaw. And that was based on a fairly detailed study at the time when the blasting bylaw was introduced. So given that there was a whole study done to establish this notification area, staff at this time recommended no changes to the blasting bylaw because there is already a discretion. And again, the variety of projects or settings, the context, it's again, would be very difficult to just recommend, 300 or 400 meters. It would be arbitrary. So we are proposing no changes here. So now moving on to changes to weekday end time hours for non-explosive rock breaking. So there's a definition in the bylaw that includes, that states what we mean by that and the kind of equipment. So jackhammering, for example, is one way in which we break rocks. And of course, much of the municipality is on a rock. So this is fairly common part of construction. Again, here we looked at some jurisdictional scans and mostly in British Columbia because they have similar geology. So it's not common that all municipalities have similar bylaws as us. We are fairly, it's based on where we are. So sometimes it's regulated in the same way as blasting. In other ways, there are some lighter requirements, but typically we don't really see, I think there was only one municipality in BC that would allow it to go to 9 p.m. 5 or 6 p.m. is more typical end time for blasting, and in particular where we are, residential environments, we're fairly urban, especially in the regional center. And we also delve into, the kind of noise levels for comparison. And again, we're not experts in noise, and we didn't commission a specific study, but I think there's some information in the report to give you an idea of how blasting, rock breaking compares to other forms of construction and or blasting. And because it tends to go on for a long period of time, it is sort of definitely on the upper scale of noise impacts when you look at quality of life and even potential health impacts. So that's a little bit in the report for those who are interested. So because of that, staff proposed that the end hours are the same as we proposed, so 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday only. And however, there is some exemption for public works or contractors working the right-of-way because they tend to move along the street and not be in the one location for a long period of time. And again, because of traffic and businesses, it may be better for them to do their work after business hours. So there is a bit of an exemption for those kinds of projects in the right-of-way. So that was one way to provide a little bit of more, balance to the recommendation. And then the final question was about other options for time reduction for rock breaking. So here again, we are still not recommending that Sundays and holidays are permitted, and that's again within residential areas. So if you remember, the noise bylaw applies for projects close to residential areas. There's an alternative that perhaps if CPID or council should choose to do so, Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. could be added to the proposed hours as an alternative, but we feel that in terms of complaints and the feedback, the rock breaking was the one aspect of construction noise that was particularly, troublesome for residents. We also took the opportunity to look at our other recommendations, and we had a lot of conversations with the construction development industry and a lot of feedback and worry about the initially proposed reductions to general construction hours, which would really was an hour and a half at the end of the day, Monday to Friday. But again, the worry was that this would add costs and timelines to construction projects. And even, over the past year, I think we have all seen additional pressures on the housing system, on the construction industry, labor shortages, material shortages. There's a lot of added costs happening. We also seem to be seeing fewer complaints for construction-related noise. So at this time, we would recommend that perhaps not maintaining the current hours might be prudent and perhaps could be evaluated in the future. But at this time, there is a worry that we would be adding additional pressure to the housing and construction industry challenges. So here's a recommendation, and thank you for your attention, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. Go ahead, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just put the motion on the floor that the Community Planning Economic Development Standing Committee recommend that Regional Council adopt the revised bylaw N207, amending bylaw N200 respecting noise as set out in attachment B of the May 2022 report.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So just a couple quick things. One, thanks to the whole team, and I feel like we haven't seen you for so long, so you must have been celebrating since Center Plan was passed, so I guess you're all recovered now from the months of celebration and not doing any other thing for us. Just kidding. I know you're all working super hard. So I do support the changes, and I'm really happy that we took a deeper look and made some changes to accommodate some of the concerns we were hearing. I didn't hear from most of the industry. I only heard from one group who wanted to present to us publicly on the change. So that was a good sign, because last time this came, did hear from many folks in the industry that we needed to make some changes. So not hearing that, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, just saying that I feel that at least there was good communication to the fact that they felt they were included in the process. So thanks for that. Just a little bit of clarity. So the changes that we're looking at today related to the notification is related to blasting and exemptions. Nothing else, right?
That's right. So just the rock, so not blasting, not construction noise, no changes there. So only the rock breaking.
Sorry, rock
breaking. Yeah, rock breaking and the new exemptions that are staff approved. That will be staff approved.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess the only other piece is we did get a request from UDI, I believe. I think that sent us a request to present. So maybe they send us further correspondence, but other than that, I haven't heard from the industry. So I support this, and if we do need to make future changes, we can do what we did now. So support it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Smith. Go ahead, Councillor Outfit.
Thank you for the presentation, and I'm very happy about the changes to rock breaking. So I'll start off on the positive note, and that's already come in handy. And Ashley will be very familiar with this, about the rock breaking that went on perpetually during the lockdown. And that actually changes there, giving a little teeth to address that, and it was addressed, and I'm appreciative of that. If I'm appreciative of, you can imagine how the neighbors were. I represent an area that's had a lot of construction, West Bedford, Larry, UTEC, et cetera, and a lot of new residents from other provinces and other countries. And they are quite surprised about a number of things. Some of them are quite surprised about construction on Sunday at all. So I'd be interested to see what your jurisdictional scan said on that. The pouring at night, once an area is built up, it's not just pouring concrete, it's the generators for the light, it's the machinery, it's the, you know, and people will send me videos and, you know, hey, Outfit, how would you like to live next to this tonight? And they film it and send it to me. So I'm a little bit concerned about the pouring, although I not as much as some other things. Is blasting permitted on weekends right now? I should know that.
Through the chair to council, yes, it is, because it's the same as general construction. There were no separate provisions for that.
Right. So that's wrong. Blasting is just as disruptive as rock breaking.
Oh, sorry, blasting is not.
It's not permitted, yeah, okay.
Sorry, I was
It's not
thinking rock
permitted on the
breaking. No,
weekend.
I get those two mixed up as well.
That's what I thought. So,
No, it's not.
okay, so what we're trying to do is make rock breaking more like blasting then, so you can't do either on the weekend. Well, and that's positive, and thank you. The one that I have the problem with is the hours of construction going to 9:30 p.m. at night. And again, this is because I represent an area of young families building homes. And I think some of my colleagues in Dartmouth and Middle Sackville and whatnot will see this as well. It's not so bad when you're building out in the middle of nowhere and you're building in the existing, you know, it's not existing neighborhoods. But once you start, and, you know, if you've got young families in there, you've got seniors, and people come here from other provinces, and they just cannot believe that you can go till 9:30 at night in a residential neighborhood. So I have a problem with that. I think most things I view as good news are reasonable. I think that 7 or 8 o'clock would have been reasonable. A lot of these were brought in back in the old days when you couldn't work year-round. Construction seasons used to not be year-round like they are now. And that's a reason why a lot of these were initially brought in. Get as much as you can done before the snow flies. Well, now we know we build year-round. And so I have a problem with the 9:30 p.m. in residential neighborhoods. Did we look at sort of breaking it down at all, just say that, okay, in an existing neighborhood, you could do this. You could pour the cement with a permit. You could or you couldn't. The same with the hours. Did we ever look at that? So, you know, we've looked at it and we said if you're next to a school, you have to give extra notice. If you're next to a health facility. But did we look at it to say if you're in an existing neighborhood, you can't, we're not going to be so generous with the pouring permits. We're not going to go to 9:30. Maybe it could be 8 o'clock. If there's neighborhood all around. If you're building a building out on the 102 somewhere and there's nobody around you, maybe you could go to 9:30. Did you have a look at that sort of flexibility at all? Because I can tell you that people in subdivisions and neighborhoods with young family are not happy about 9:30.
Through the chair to the councillor, so the noise bylaw requirements apply to residential areas.
Yeah,
So if you're outside of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they wouldn't apply. So they are all
Right.
within residential areas. And our initial report in July, which was presented in September, did recommend reducing the end hours to 8 p.m.
Right.
So that was our initial recommendation. So we are now suggesting perhaps now is not the best time, but it is still as an alternative in the report to revert back to the
Right,
initial.
so then, Madam Chair or Madam Solicitor, how do I go back to saying that I support most of what's here, but I would like us to go back to 8 p.m. from 9:30? What's the best way for me to do that as an amendment or a proposed amendment?
Madam Chair, through you to the councillor can put an amendment on the floor to amend the motion so that you're adopting one of the alternatives.
Okay. And I can make that specific then to residential areas, right? The 8 o'clock versus the 9:30? Again, I'll use the example of out in a highway somewhere, you know, if we're building a hotel next to the airport, well, maybe the people in the other hotels won't be so happy, but, you know, I'm trying to think of an example here off the top of my head where I've got a neighborhood of young families versus something out on the highway. Turn that bell off. But I would like to amendment that we go back to, in residential areas, that the hours be restricted, the cutoff be 8 p.m.
Councillor, can I ask that you come back
Yeah,
to
I
do
can come
that?
back. Simon,
Okay,
you want to
that's
help me
perfect,
craft
because
something there, or do you want to, okay.
Awesome.
You can all say you agree with it in the meantime.
Just because the timer did go off, so got to come back. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Austin.
Just as a suggestion, rather than trying to craft something on the fly, I mean, we'll have, what, 2-3 weeks before this will come to regional, right, to sort out a proper amendment, just as a suggestion. You know, I just kind of thinking on it, do I have any place in my district that I wouldn't consider residential, right? In the urban core, it gets to be a little complicated. I think there's a difference too between, you know, building a single family home and, you know, whaling away in some 5-6 story apartment building too. And that was one of the things I struggled with. Like, I would have liked to actually, you know, I'm generally okay with what's before us. The one that I struggled with was on the holidays, right? I mean, I kind of feel like, well, it's a couple of days a year. What's the big deal about restricting it to holidays? And my headspace was entirely on the large construction project, right? Like not having them building on the holiday, giving people in the neighborhood a break. But staff pointed out, it's like, well, there's not really a way to differentiate. So if you're going to restrict them from building on the holidays, you're also going to tell the weekend warrior that's out there building a deck or something that your construction activity is not permitted at this time. So, you know, it ends up being fairly complicated trying to single it out. So I mean, I'm okay with what's before us at this time, and that's kind of where I'm at with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Donna.
Madam Chair, through you to the councillor, I just want to point out that alternative 3 in the report advises is to, for Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee, may recommend that Regional Council number 3 amend the revised bylaw N207 is set out an attachment B of this report to change the end hours for construction noise to 8 p.m. Monday to Friday. So you could put that motion on the floor if you so choose. Yeah, so it's alternative number 3 at the end of the report dated what's the report date?
It's the supplemental.
Yeah, it's supplemental.
Supplemental on June 16th. Page 8. All right, thank you for that. You still have time on the clock, are you?
Well, I just had a quick question. I forgot and turned off my mic, but then it came back to me. One of the pieces of correspondence from the industry, I mean, I think there was only 2, I only saw 2, was a request for a public hearing. I'm not convinced that that's warranted, but maybe we should provide that for agenda review at regional, and then they can decide whether that's needed or not. I mean, I've never seen I can't recall a public hearing on an item that wasn't a development project, but and getting 2 letters is probably not enough in my mind to warrant it in this case, but I think we should note the correspondence and request. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Cuttle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And on that note, like right on cue, Councillor Austin, I was going to talk about the request for the public hearing. You know, I think, you know, when we make changes like this, it does have broad implications for both industry and our communities. And so I'm willing to consider the idea of holding a public hearing on this and making an amendment to the motion that's on the floor to add a part 2, which would be to schedule a public hearing. You know, I know from both my current role and my past role, complaints about construction noise and their impact on businesses and the enjoyment of people's homes and communities is something that that you do hear a lot about when it's happening. And, I think it is important that we strike the right balance between construction and enjoyment of peace. And I do realize that we are at a point where we want to be seeing construction happen, and we want to see it accelerated, but this isn't going to end tomorrow. This is going to be going on for a very, very long time. And so we have to find a way of living with this as we go forward. So, I am interested too in hearing, from industry to, what really are the implications? Like, what are the dollar and cents implications of having an 8 p.m. finish time as opposed to 9:30? And how can we work with all sides to make something work? So I'm going to put that amendment on the floor and see how the rest of the committee feels about that. So I think the motion would stand as it is now, and it would just add a piece to say, and to schedule a public hearing.
Okay, is that good, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, that's good. That is available, I believe, as well on your screens, proposed wording motion, though it does require a seconder.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Austin. Thank you. Okay.
Any discussion? I think I said what I had to say about it, so.
I may have some discussion if we can swap seats. Would that be appropriate? We have our vice chair right here. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That puts you on. Yeah, it puts me on, but how do I get Trish on? Oh, someone else? Okay, there we go. Here I am, Vice Chair. I see that next we have Councillor Abbott.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Or is this to the amendment?
Oh, I see. All right, I wanted to, sorry, I'm on the board to put my amendment on after, so I can keep quiet right now, sorry.
Okay, so speaking to the amendment, Sean? Sam, I mean? Sorry.
That's all right. There we go. I used to get Steve back when we had 3 Steves, more so than John. Anyway, I know I seconded the amendment because, I think it's worth having a conversation on it, because since we did have the request, I'm not convinced right now we actually need a public hearing where we've only had the two pieces of feedback. To me, it's a high bar to say, yes, let's do an actual public hearing at council for something that's not a requirement where, anyone can write us on with their concerns as they have. I'm not convinced it's necessary. And so I don't think I would support us recommending it, but more so I wanted to signpost it for agenda review so they can think about it, right? And look at it from their own perspective as they're looking at regional, because I'm not convinced it's really necessary right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Austin. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you very much. And I am actually going to respectfully disagree with my colleague, and I don't know why I feel this protective feeling over the construction industry. I mean, I can't even imagine living in Councillor Outhitt's district and what they have gone through with the noise. I can only imagine how horrible it would be, and a total disruption to peace and enjoyment of your home. But at the same time, our construction industry is under unprecedented pressure right now. We are in a housing crisis. They are being demanded by all levels of government, by the public. We need more units, and we need them yesterday. So I feel like this proposal, although yes, the timing couldn't be worse. I mean, we are in a crisis. So it's almost like we are telling them, yeah, continue providing for us. We need these units right away, but we're going to tie one of your hands behind your back and, just make it really, really difficult for you to complete all of the goals that they have to put these buildings up and put people in them and help alleviate some of the affordability pressures and the vacancy pressures. So I'm just not, and also by eliminating a full 10-hour day a week, if that's my understanding, so Sundays would be out completely. In the recommendation, Sundays are, pardon me? Yeah, so these are some of the things that the public hearing could address by members of the industry. Yeah, like these are some of the changes that would affect them like significantly. These are significant changes that would affect their industry and their ability to perform and their ability to provide the desperately needed housing that we need in our municipality. So. And we could also, with the public hearing, hear from the residents who are gravely affected by this. I can't imagine. I'm sure it is horrible. But there has to be, and also hearing from industry. We did hear from two pieces of correspondence, but they represent industry. So that's their position, to speak on behalf of industry. So even though it was only two pieces of correspondence, the representation that they bring is quite broad. So I do feel a public hearing, even if it is not warranted, that doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do with something that has such a huge potential impact to a very needed, even though kind of slightly despised industry right now. We need to hear from the impact. So I don't know if you started my timer or not. I can go on, but I probably shouldn't. Oh, I'm okay? Okay, so I just ask that we do, what's the word? Approve this public hearing. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. It means that we bring it to regional council to consider. If we shut it down now, then I think that's very premature. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Purdy. Next on the list, I have Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And just a quick question to sort of help me just sort of make my decision here. How many industry stakeholders were engaged with, your team in the preparation of this?
Through Madam Chair to the councillor. So we mostly work with, initially was a development industry group that was under development services, which now is really part of the DLG. So DLG includes UDI, the Road Builders Association, the Home Builders, a number, all of the key industries that are involved, the road builders, the home builders, UDI, and
so you spoke to the people who are working on the sites that are doing the day-to-day, and they didn't red flag any of what is proposed here?
Well, we did have concerns, so those are, I think, reflected in our first report, in the second report, and there was a letter attached, I think, to the first report as well from industry. So, so understandably, they're not supportive of any reductions in the construction or rock breaking hours. I think everything would have some impact, and we did some business analysis as part of the first report as well. But they were highly supportive of the proposed exemptions, which would be, I think, very helpful and a lot more efficient. So this was our way of trying to balance things, you know, providing some, I guess, changes for the residents who are feeling the impacts, but also allowing for this new exemption process that would also, I think, be very helpful. And just to clarify, so yeah, so the Sunday, so construction will be allowed on Sunday, so we're not touching that. It will be just the rock breaking, right, that we are limiting, yeah.
All right, and in any of your conversations, nobody asked for a public hearing? You know, you didn't hear that request come?
No, we did hear through UDI, so UDI did raise it on
through the letter that they sent us.
The letter, and in our meetings as well. So that
in your meetings
that was
as well.
being asked.
Okay.
We were asked about the process. How would a request for public hearing be had? But this is up to council. It's not a staff recommendation.
All right. No, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Next on the list, I have Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to have a public hearing because I don't think residents have been considered enough so far in this. And if I could just share briefly my experience with 210 Willett, the two 17-story towers that are going in the backyards of a lot of townhouses and next to some condos and apartment buildings. There are hundreds of people affected by that project, and it's going on 7 days a week. They never get a break. The jackhammering goes on all those long hours from Monday to Friday, and then all the rocks that have been broken up are then loaded into dump trucks all weekend long. You know, boulders half the size of this room going into trucks from early morning to late at night, pounding away. They get no break. The dust, they can't go outside their houses. They've lost the whole summer because the rock breaking is going to last 4 months. And the whole project is 3 to 4 years. So they are getting no break from the noise, 7 days a week. And I just think that's extreme. And we're going to have more infill housing that is going to be closer to residences for the next number of years because that's the way our city's developing. So I understand that we have to keep the construction going, but I just don't, you know, in this report, I just don't see that we've hit a balance that respects people's rights to their own enjoyment of their own houses. And I hear from residents almost every day about this. So it hasn't been a real joy for their councillor either. But, and I can hear the blasts from my house and I can feel them from my house, so I know how often they happen. But it's not just the blasting. That's actually the least the least amount of the problem. It's the constant noise of the dropping of the boulders into the dump trucks and things like that. So that, that is not really addressed, I don't think, in this report, and I don't feel like I could support it. I think we either need to hear more from residents or have a public hearing to find a better balance. So anyway, thank you for letting me get my more than 2 cents worth in here, but it's been a huge disruption for these people. And one resident disclosed that she has depression and that this constant noise has meant she's not able to get rest, and it has worsened her condition. So she, explained that to me, and I don't think she's the only one who has health impacts because of the constant noise. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Alhit.
Thank you, Deputy Chair, Vice Chair. I completely agree with everything Catherine just said, but I think it's the reason why we shouldn't have a public hearing. I think she's outlined the situation perfectly, but the wrong solution. We have heard from we had the survey, right? We heard from the residents, and we did hear from the public through the survey. And I think it's time for us to make a decision. And we know that if we have a public hearing, that the developers and the construction companies and UDI and everybody's going to come in here and say, we couldn't possibly make $1, we couldn't possibly deal with the house crisis unless we can work till 9:30 instead of 8 o'clock. And we're going to hear residents saying it's driving me crazy. Well, we've already heard that. We've heard it through the surveys, we've heard it through the letters, we've heard it through the consultation you did with the industry. I kind of chuckle when they said that the industry strongly supported the exemptions, but not the restrictions. Well, what would you expect? So I think, and good Lord, I don't think in my time on council, there's probably been too many more councillors that have been more supportive of good development. And that there's probably no district that has seen more development. So it's not a matter of not supporting the fact that we need homes and that we need development and growth is good and development is good and it provides jobs and all this sort of stuff. We still have to live here. And our job is also to make sure that we represent the people who still have to live here, which probably are not going to come to the public hearing. What will come to the public hearing will be the network of the developers and the contractors and they'll all get their folks out. And Mrs. Jones, who hasn't had her baby sleep well in the last X number of months, will not come down and talk to us. But we know, we've heard from her. So what I would like to do is let's not hold the public hearing because we have done public consultation. And then I'll bring my motion forward that we ask that we reduce it to 8 from 9:30. So I hope we'll defeat this, and then hope you won't defeat my motion. So there you go. Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you to the committee, where we are approaching 12 o'clock, I believe if we want to continue discussion, would have to entertain a motion to extend the meeting potentially
Move to
another
extend
hour.
to 12:30 at maximum.
Okay, do we need to vote on that?
Yep.
Okay, all those in favor of extending the meeting? I think that motion carries. On we go. Next on the list, we have Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, and I hope I don't get struck by lightning because I agree with Tim Oathit over here. So, what a day! Just kidding. So I have to agree with your comments, Councillor, because as mentioned, and maybe just because it's been so long, some of our colleagues forget, we did do, like this is the supplementary report from the original report, which had about 900 people who responded to the survey, which was, looking at it, there were many comments related to wanting to see a later start time and earlier end time. And obviously the industry thinks totally different. So even if we did a public meeting, we would hear the exact same thing. Residents would say start later and earlier, and the industry would say start earlier and later. So I don't really know what a public meeting would do at council other than receive the same information that we have on the survey and the multiple letters that we received from the industry already from our original report. Even with the comments that were broken down. So I don't see the point of having a public hearing because we've already got the information. And if we get to the next Councillor Oathit's amendment, I'll speak to that. But I don't support it because we already got the information in front of us, and I think we need to make a decision. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you. So just one last ditch attempt here. The biggest complaint I have heard across the board in my measly year and a half here on council is that HRM doesn't listen. Nobody listens. Nobody hears us. The industry, 2 associations have asked for a public hearing. Just because we are assuming who will and who will not show up to speak at the public hearing is not a good grounds to say, oh, let's just not even do a public hearing. The survey, they're online, it represented one group, and then we have, I think a public hearing is exactly what we need to do for this, and then put it to bed, and then we have done our due diligence. No one can come back and say, well, you just did it again. I think a public hearing is a very good thing to do, and then we vote, and this amended bylaw is done. And then we can't have anyone come back and say, well, you didn't listen, you didn't hear us, we didn't have proper representation. So I hope that we support this going forward, and then Councillor Outhitt can put his amendment on the floor. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Purdy. And back to Councillor Outhitt.
Just very quickly, and with the greatest amount of respect, if we go into a meeting tonight of developers, they're going to say that Halifax is the worst place in the country to do business. If we go into a residents meeting and have tea with our neighbors tonight, they're going to tell us that developers run Halifax. I've heard that for 15 years. We'll hear it for the next 15 years. Neither statement is true. Both sides are mad, so at least we're fair. But public consultation is essential. Not a public hearing. Public consultation is essential, and we've done it. We have heard from 900, and to hear from 20 or 30 more, maybe, or 5 or 10 more that night, to me, will not do anything to quell the fact that whichever side loses won't be happy. Public consultation is essential. It's part of our job. We've done it. We've heard from 900 people, and I think we don't need to extend that any further.
All right, thank you. And I heard no more speakers on the list. The question's being called. So I will say all those in favor of the public hearing? Aye. Okay. All those opposed? That motion was defeated.
Okay. Moving on, Councillor Outhitt, go ahead.
Madam Chair, in all seriousness, though, if we hadn't done extensive public consultation, I would agree with you 100%. We cannot do this in a vacuum. We need to hear from the people. You know, there's no question there that democracy, we have to hear from the people, but it's just how we did in this case. So listen, thank you. I have a motion, alternative 3, that I'd like to put on the floor from the supplemental report. It's alternative number 3, that the Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee recommend that Regional Council amend the revised bylaw N207 as set out in attachment with report to change the end hours for construction noise to 8 p.m. Monday to Friday. So moved.
Chair, just to confirm regarding process, I think that where that's an alternative from the staff report, the process and where the staff recommendation report is currently on the floor, the process we would be best to follow would be to potentially vote down the motion from the report, and then to move alternative 3. Though I pause to allow solicitor to correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I think I could move see, what I really wanted to do was move an amendment just to say that it is till 8 instead of 9:30. Then it was suggested the alternative motion, because I'm fine with the motion other than this amendment to 8 p.m. So, Madam Solicitor, you're earning your pay here today, sorry, but can I just not make an amendment then that it be 8 p.m. instead of having to do this Adam's gamut? Who I'm sure is watching and not very happy with me, but that's all right. Yeah, no, and you're right in most cases, occasionally. I mean, if we have to do it that way, fine, but it was just, I thought I could just do an amendment.
Madam Chair, through you to the councillor, the clerk is correct. It should be to defeat the motion that's currently on the floor, which is the original staff recommendation, and then to adopt the amendment.
I sit corrected. All right, thank you. So please, I guess what I'll say to my colleagues then, if unfortunately, would you mind voting this down and then hopefully support my alternative? Thanks.
I just have a question about that. So does he mean vote down the whole
Unfortunately,
recommendation?
Yeah.
And then
Bring it back with this alternative.
bring it back with this alternative?
Right. That's
Oh.
why it's awkward, but
That's awkward.
democracy is awkward.
Yeah. Okay, did we have a seconder for that one?
We don't need to because we have to defeat it.
Oh, right, okay, got it. So that being on the floor, do we have any speakers to that? We're on the main motion. Oh, Councillor Austin, you just put your name up?
Sorry, I just returned us to the other heading in council system. Those are just the former speakers on the list.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? Aye. Yeah. Okay, and all opposed? A tie means defeat? Yeah. Yes, that's correct. That means...
The motion is defeated as a tie vote, 3-3. In those instances, that would be a defeat.
All right, so then... Go ahead, Councillor. Go ahead, Councillor Smith.
This is just a process question, so if we vote again and that's defeated, then do we revert back to the current noise bylaw? Is that what happens?
Or would we go to regional with no recommendation?
Or does it go to regional with no recommendation?
Just vote for it.
Just want to know our options.
May we have a 5-minute recess?
Yeah, let's just do that. Let's just vote for it.
May we have
Yeah.
a 5-minute recess?
No, I'll call for the question. It has to come to council anyway, then we can, yeah, let's just call for the question.
So I believe,
Oh,
yes,
sorry,
the
after
next
that.
stage then would be to put the motion on the floor for alternative 3, I believe.
Yeah. It's not.
Is that, the Community Planning Economic Development Standing Committee recommend that Regional Council amend revised bylaw N207 as set out in the attachment B of the report to change the end hours for construction noise hours to 8 p.m. Monday to Friday. So moved.
All right.
We can fight it again in Regional
we-
Council.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Cuttle.
I'm wondering, because is there a way to put a seasonality to this? I mean, I think a big part of the problem, as Councillor Morris said, is that, during the summer, you have people who are wanting to be outside, our days are longer, our summers are short. The opportunity to kind of enjoy our outdoor spaces, and particularly on weekends and evenings are kind of greatest from, the spring to the fall. I'm wondering if there's any ability for us in the bylaw to put some kind of a seasonal time frame around the additional restriction till 8 p.m. and then perhaps in the winter extend it back up to 9:30 when most people are indoors with their windows closed. I mean, because the other thing is that people have want to have their windows open, they want fresh air through their homes. It's very hard to block out the noise in the summertime. Is that a possibility?
Through Madam Chair to Councillor, I believe the council could add those kinds of provisions. I'll defer to the legal counsel to correct me if I'm wrong, but we do have provisions for civic holidays and weekends. So, I mean, the dates change from year to year, but if there were sort of months of the year that could be added, I believe it wouldn't be out of bounds, but let me know if I'm wrong. It would have to be supplementary report because that's not in the alternatives right now, so.
Well, then I should be debating with you without you being on the speakers list there. But I mean, in the wintertime, you're less likely to have your window open for prolonged amount of time and on a regular basis. So I don't know if it's, I think, I don't know where to go. I'm going to look over here to Simon. An amendment, or do I need a staff report on that?
I would propose that where there's a little bit of potentially detail in terms of what's being requested there, it would potentially be best, as had been suggested earlier as well, for an unrelated or a different matter, that's something that potentially could be crafted with staff before this goes to regional council and then could come in as an amendment at regional council.
Mr. Clerk, could she request a supplemental report on that?
Or do I just send it to regional council for consideration?
Go ahead, Donna.
Madam Chair, through you to Councillor, the committee member can put an amendment on the floor now for the motion, or there's still the option of putting amendments on the floor at regional council. That may be time to actually create the motion that you're looking for to get the result that you're looking for. Depending on the nature of the ask, it may require a supplemental report if it's something that staff's never looked at. And certainly when you're talking about consultation with the community. So there may still be a requirement for a supplemental report that could come through ask here or an ask at regional council.
Well, I was thinking a supplemental report would be the way to go here, just to look at the options around what the start and end dates could be, and if that could come forward to, I guess, regional council. Is that where this is going next? This is going next. Do we have to bring it back here?
If you ask for a supplemental report here, it comes back to this committee. If you wait and ask for a supplemental report at regional council, it would likely go back to regional council.
Okay, and I guess my final question here is around the need for a supplemental report. If I just made an amendment to put in a seasonal provision around the time, I'm assuming staff would be the ones who would come back with some more detail on exactly what that would look like if I don't have the dates specifically available right now.
Madam Chair, through you to the councillor, normally if it's just a minor amendment, it doesn't require a supplemental report. But if we're talking about seasonal dates for construction activities, that, again, it's not been considered in the past, and in the creation of this report, it's a fairly, I would suggest, even to the construction industry, be a very substantial change to the way they operate now. So that would require a supplemental report.
Okay, so do we defeat Tim's and ask for the supplemental report, or do I add? Mine's passed. I mean, yours is. No, it's not. Yours is on the floor, and I want to ask for. So, I don't know where the supplemental report fits in this moment with Tim's motion.
would we potentially like to take 5 minutes just to sort ourselves out?
I think that's a great idea, Mr. Clerk. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are now returned into session. It is 12:22.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. So where we left off is, would you like to explain, or no, we're just going to vote? Are we just going to vote on Councillor Outhet's amendment to reduce the hours to 8 p.m.? Okay. Okay, so all in favor, say aye. All opposed? No, I'm the one opposing. Okay. All right, thank you. And so does that conclude, or Councillor Cuttle? Yeah, Councillor Cuttle, go ahead.
Sorry, on to the next here. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to staff for helping figure this out. I would like to put another motion on the floor that Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee request a staff report to explore the impact of seasonal hours of operation on the construction industry.
Seconder for that? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. All right.
Okay.
Would you like?
So I think we, just had a big discussion about this and about how we're kind of dealing with two pressures here. One is from the construction industry who wants to move forward with building. We have a housing crisis. We've got a lot of pressure on our construction industry. So we understand the need for needing to help support that industry and the work that they're doing, at the same time striking the balance with residents in the city and how we continue to build and develop while maintaining a quality of life, particularly for those around large construction projects that are multi-year projects. So the concept here is that in the summer, when people are more likely to be outdoors, more likely to have their windows open, wanting to enjoy time in their backyard, that we look at creating a seasonal time, a reduced seasonal construction time from 8 o'clock perhaps during the summertime, 9:30 in the wintertime. In the wintertime, when people are less likely to have their windows open, less likely to be outside in the dark evenings. So that's the idea here, and I hope my committee colleagues here support this motion and see if we can't find a good compromise. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cuttle. And the question has been called. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. And that motion has passed. All right, and thank you so much for that fulsome conversation. And thank you, staff, for all your hard work and bringing that to us. And I've got to find my papers here. So this brings us to members of Standing Committee, none. 12.3, Community Design Advisory Committee, none. 12.4, Heritage Advisory Committee, none. 13, motions, none. And we have an in-camera package that I believe we do need to go in camera for. So can we have a motion to move in camera? Thank you. Yep, so moved. Okay. Do we seconder? Yep, thank you, Councillor Austin. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Oh, bless your heart. That's okay. It was a free lunch.
Thank you. I can confirm we are now in public.
Well, okay, welcome back, everyone. And we are now, do we have a public presentation? Do we have anyone signed up?
I just need the public motion to defer, to ratify the deferral in camera.
We do. Would someone like to move that? Maybe Councillor Austin? Yes? Okay, Councillor Austin, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Cuddle. Perfect. Added items.
There are no added items at this time.
No notices of motion. No. And public participation. Do we have any registered speakers?
Thank you, Chair. There are no registered speakers.
All right. I'd like to just ask if there are any participants who would like to speak. No. Going once, going twice, third time. Closed. All right, thank you. Date of our next meeting is July 21st, 2022. If required, is that still on the table, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, that's correct. There is also tentatively scheduled or I shouldn't say tentatively scheduled, but a public meeting. It just says July 21st to be consistent with the approved agenda for this meeting.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And so can we call for an adjournment, please? Thank you very much. We will see you next month. Thanks so much. Or September. Okay. Well, we have the 30th. We have the 30th.